Hey everybody, my name is Kevin Maier, and today we're going to be checking out the latest character animation rig from Lupin House, Rita. Alright, so besides all the pretty standard features on how a modern rig will perform, we've got a couple of really cool features I found interesting and would like to share with you all here. First off, we have the IK-FK switch controls on the rig located at the top of each limb here, marked out with the little blue or red flag NURB curve. This is awesome in my book because it helps keep things localized to each respective limb based on what you need to do within the shot. Next, going down to the base of the spine here at the cog control, within it, we've got this really cool channel called Save Volume. This is great for when you want to maintain the mass of Rita's torso region when you're going for any kind of squash or stretching here when posing things out with the chest. When it's turned to a 1, and we're moving the chest control around a bit, you'll see that volume preserved with some added squash and stretch happening in here. But when we go and turn that value back to 0 and move that chest control, you'll see things compress down without that cool added feature, losing that volume preservation. Moving up to the spine, to the chest control, we've got your space switching channel located locally within the control itself. Personally, I think this is rad. Similar to the IK-FK switch controls mentioned from earlier, having this feature in the control itself is great, so you don't have to keep hopping in and out of control selections to do different switches. This next channel here in the chest control is really cool. Pivot Translate. What you can do with this here is adjust the location of the pivot point from where the chest will rotate from. With some added positive value here, the pivot point scoots up the spine and can be a really cool tool for when you're blocking in a character's breathing and for making specific C-shapes with the spine's line of action. Going back to the space switching channel here really quick, when the channel is set up to none, it'll behave like a traditional FK control, following along other controls higher up in its FK chain. When switched to main, the control will make the chest act like an IK control, but follow the main control down at the base of the rig. Continuing on up the spine here to the neck and head region, right out the gate, the head is going to follow along the neck like a traditional FK control, but when we change this global channel here to 1, the head will start to feel more like an IK control, getting the translational values, but none of the rotation from lower controls. Going up to the head now, we've got space switching and global channels. Again, right out of the gate, the head behaves like an FK control following the neck space here, but when we change the global to 1, we get more of an IK control behavior to how the head's rotation doesn't inherit any of the rotational values from lower controls down the spine. When we switch the space of the head to main, we get a really fun quality to how the head control behaves in where we get the values from the main control influencing the head, but other controls up the spine here, like the cog, have no effect, creating an IK feeling control to the head based on where Rita's main control is placed. Based on the individual needs of each animator's shot and their personalized workflows, this can be a really cool feature to play around with. Shifting our focus now down to the feet and legs, within each of Rita's leg IK controls, you'll have all the various rolls and pivots for foot peel-offs and banking as channels you can dial up and down. But also, you have similar behaving controls to get your foot peel-offs and banking located outside of this primary sort of catch-all IK foot control here on the IK ball and IK toe controls. Having worked at a few different studios and seeing different animators' workflows, having a versatility in how you can work with and pose the rig can be a really cool feature. Moving back to her leg IK control and checking out these other features, Rita has channels for stretch, squash, save volume, length adjusters, twist, and a soft IK for helping out with knee pops. When we've got stretch turned on here, you'll see the foot geometry keeps with the location of wherever the IK control goes, but when we have that turned off, the foot will only go so far as the rig's neutral state of the limb's proportions. Going down here to the length 1 and length 2 channels, when we add some value to these guys, we'll get some proportional scaling to the upper and lower limb lengths that will be maintained as you move around the leg IK foot. The twist channel here will affect the knee's placement, adding some rotation within the leg without changing the position of the foot control itself. And lastly, we've got the soft IK channel, great for helping out with knee pops when doing walks. Moving up to the knee controls, starting off, the pull vector behaves like your standard IK control. Similar to other controls in the Rita rig, we've got the space switching channel located within the control itself, and can be changed to auto, main, cog, or hip based on how you need to move for the biomechanics of the action or your own personal workflow preferences. We've also got a snap channel here. When turned on, we can pin the knee to the location of the pull vector control. Great for when you need to plant the knee to the ground. Moving up the spine, again, we've got a handful of controls with offsets for the hips in IK and FK depending on how you like to work. Now up to the arms and hands. Starting off, her arms are set to FK following her chest base, but with the global channel here now set to 1, the arms will still behave like an FK chain, but not inherit the rotational values coming from the chest. Shoulder controls here at the top of the arm are really solid, with a slight translation also happening as we move things around, mimicking how our clavicles naturally both rotate around and translate. Now, as we tumble the camera around to a 3/4 back view here, we can see the deformation still holding up real nice. Going down here to the elbows, or arm FK2 control, as we have named here in the rig, right out of the gate, behaves like your standard FK, same here with the wrist control. Coming down here into the hand and fingers, I really liked this hand cup control and found it super useful to get that more natural rounding that happens in the hand and fingers when they're in a more relaxed pose. We've also got one more FK control here that can adjust the fingers from the first knuckle to add a little bit more flow to a hand pose if you need. Next, checking out the thumb. Similar to other individual finger controls, we've got translation, rotation, and scale available for you to adjust things as needed when doing hand and finger poses. Switching the arm over to IK really quick and checking out that elbow control, we get a pull vector, now visible like we previously saw with Rita's leg and knee. In it, we've got channels for space switching and snap. When snap is turned on, the geo pins itself to the pull vector's location, great for when you've got to plant that elbow on a table or whatever you need in the shot. Space switching for the elbow control first starts off in auto and will inherit some of the values coming from the chest, following along the bigger controls like Rita's main control down here at her base, similar to other space switching we've previously talked about. And we can also change that to more specific parts of the rig like cog, chest, shoulder, head, whatever you need. Jumping back down here to the wrist IK control, we've got a bunch of cool channels I had a lot of fun playing around with that work similar to Rita's leg IK control. Here we can add some roll, like a foot's peel off from the ground, or bank from side to side, pivot from different points along the hand with heel, ball, and tip pivot channels, and just like with the leg, we have also got a control outside the wrist's main IK that affects the ball of the hand too. Overall, I really like this hand and finger control rig setup and see a lot of potential for great expressive hand poses interacting with surfaces and objects. Next, above these different rolls and pivots, similar to what we talked about in the feet, we've got other useful channels like twist, stretch, squash, save volume, length 1 and 2, and also a soft IK. Now moving on to the face controls, we've got a ton of useful things to check out here. Starting off, we've got the IAM control. Right off the bat, they move like an IK control with wherever you place them and are following the headspace. But we can switch this global channel to 1, and now we get independent control of the eyes, free from wherever the head is rotating around. Next, we've got our brows. The bigger square controls are your main base movers, taking with them all the secondaries and sub-controls. One layer deeper in, we've got these shapers that are great for getting specific expressions. Then one layer further, we've got also these hair controls marked in green that will adjust just the specific geometry of the brow and none of the surrounding forehead and eye socket regions. All these controls combined can be great to nail specific and nuanced expressions. Adding into the mix here, we have a specific brow mid control that can be used, like in this example, for a furrow to give another level of shaping and specificity to things that, when used right, can be really nice. Next up, we've got the lid controls with the main movers and secondaries, like what we had with the brows, that include translate, rotate in Z, scale in X, and a depth channel to add a further degree of lid shaping. Then we've also got the eye socket or eye ring controls, as they're called here on Rita. Great for further sculpting expressions on the face. Hopping down here, we've got the lower lid controls, where we have all the versatility previously mentioned on the upper lids. Here are the eye ring lower controls to work this region of the lower eye socket or mask area of the face. Next up, we've got the nose up control as part of the cheek region. Super important to also keep this region active as you're posing out your expressions with the eyes and mouth. Over here and on both sides, we've got 3 main controls for the upper area of the face. First up is what's called the eyebrow control, great for adding another another layer of squash and stretch for expressions and can adjust the overall location of the brows, eye socket region, and the position of the sphere, the eye itself. One layer down, we've next got the eye control that behaves a lot like the control above, but this is localized to just the eye sockets, lids, and eye sphere. Then the last control here in this hierarchy is the eye orbit control, which has influence over just the lids themselves. Moving down the face here is the nose control with translation, rotation, and scaling all available to you. Next here are the controls for the individual sides. Continuing on to the mouth region, this is her jaw control. Overall, I found it held up really nice with both rotation and translation. These are the mouth corner controls, or emotion controls as we've called them here on Rita, outfitted with channels that can help you get specific lip shapes. Zooming back a smidge, we've got the mouth global control and a secondary control within that hierarchy called mouth control for overall mouth location, posing, and adding more levels of fleshiness to your lip sync. Really cool thing about the mouth control here is that it does affect the nose region of Rita's face as well. Here we have the lip-specific controls to make all your mouth shapes. This is the lip up base control, sort of a main mover for the upper lip, and we've got the same down here on the bottom. Opening the jaw really quick to show off the mouth corners. Next up here are the lip-specific shaper controls. As we go along here, we've got micro controls added in as well to help you get whatever expression or mouth shape you're going for. Up next are the teeth and gum controls. Main overall control here, followed up by minor, more localized controls that can be used to help cheat things to camera and get a more specific graphic feel to your mouth shapes. Zero all that out really quick. This is the head low control, great for making overall global adjustments to this lower region of the face and head, as well as adding some asymmetry. Building on that, here is the squash low control, where we can get some more asymmetry as well as some squash and stretch to the face, and can even work in a chewing motion if Rita's doing that in your shot. Mirroring the lower half of the face, we've got the head up control and the squash up control. Both behave really similar to their lower counterparts, one affecting things on a bigger scale and the other on a smaller scale in the region of the head and face. The biggest difference between the two being the squash control only works in translation and has a higher up point of origin, versus the head up control's origin is down by the center of the head itself. Zooming things back out here and going back to our main control for Rita, this is where you'll do all your global placement for the rig. But when we go closer in and check out the offset control, this is where you'll have channels that can turn on and off the visibility of the secondary and bendy controls. Specifically getting into the weeds of one of these secondary controls I found really cool was in the throat pin control here. There is a channel called tension that you can dial up and down that will activate a deformer along the neck that can be used for breathing and singing. Really cool feature of this rig. Then, working in combination with some of these other secondary controls, we can further add this level of refinement and specificity with this part of her rig. Applying this idea to the arm, we can see how the secondaries can be used to further adjust the silhouette of her geo. Same can be said about the secondaries going down her pants, and you can see here when we go into wireframe mode, the secondary affects both the pant geo and her leg geo as well. When used wisely, I think we could get some really cool added levels of squash and stretch to her limbs and overall look like you could get as if you were drawing the character in 2D. Switching over here to the bendy controls, we get a more bigger picture style of control that does adjustments that will help you get more fluid shapes with Rita's limbs as you post things out to the camera. Then, for continued refinement, toggle those secondaries back on, and you can keep making adjustments as you see fit. Alright, and that's Rita. Overall, I'm super impressed with the layout and versatility of the controls, range of expressions, and all the cool unique bits that make her a really solid rig. I'm excited to see what you all create, and be sure to tag Lupin House when you post your shots online. Thanks, and happy animating.